Okay, happy lunchtime or happy Wednesday to everybody who's watching us, and welcome back to episode 2 of the new series of We Are Careers. Very good to have all of you here with us. For those who've not joined the show before, my name's Chris Webb. I'm a higher education careers advisor and a registered career development professional, and I'm joined again back from a lovely bit of time off, nice relaxing time off, my co-host Sabir. So Sabir, how are you doing today?
I am doing fabulous, and it feels so good to be back, and I'm particularly excited. I mean, I was sad that I got to miss the show with our new CEO, David, but I'm glad Victoria did a phenomenal job. So thank you so much, Victoria, for stepping into my into the co-host hot seat, and it's great to be back. Now, for those of you that don't know me, I'm known as Meet Sabiha, and I work in 12 countries as an RCDP, and I specialize in working with young people who are looking to transform their career potential. And I'm also the creator of the 4.0 Class Academy, which is all about working with international career practitioners and helping them develop powerful career support for their client bases. Now, as I mentioned, we've got an extra special guest today. Now, for those of you that are watching us live, if you can hear us and see us, please do let us know, and let us know which part of the world, should we say, because we're now reaching international heights. So where are you watching us from today? Which part of the world are you watching us from? Let us know in the comments thread. And also as well, we've got with us today Dr. Deirdre Hughes, and I affectionately refer to her as Dr. D. And she has given us an amazing, phenomenal bonus that you usually have to pay good money for, and rightly so. But we're going to be revealing this right till the end of the show, and it's going to be, you're also going to get our resources document as well, as always, so make sure you stay tuned right till the end of the show. And so without further ado, I want to introduce us to our fantastic and phenomenal powerhouse. And already welcome, guys. I can see people in the group saying good morning, good morning. Hello, lovely to see you all. Liz in sunny. Hey, Liz, great to have you here. Glad you could make it. I know you had some work that you needed to do. So Dr. D, what do our members, for those members who don't know you, and I would be shocked if anybody didn't know you, but for those of you, because I know we've got some new members as well, and I'm going to be doing a shout out, and I'm going to be doing, sharing one of my feel good stories as well. But Dr. D, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do?
Well, hi. Hello, everyone, and thank you for inviting me here to contribute. Who am I? I'm Deirdre. I originally come from Northern Ireland. Nowadays, when it comes to career, people have different portfolios. Think of me as a triangle with my career. In the middle is careers, employment, unemployment, and skills, young people and adults. And at the top of the triangle, I do some work around policy advice. So I'm currently chairing the formal review of the Matrix quality standard in the UK. I'm a researcher. So I have a business where I do quite a lot of research, looking at career-related learning in primary schools at the moment, the big return on investment for career guidance, and also looking at issues to do with decent work, inclusion and its sustainability. And then the most important part of the triangle is I'm a careers practitioner. So I subscribe to the CDI, I'm on the register, and I can still, I think, walk the walk as well as maybe talk the talk.
I love that, Dr. D, and we're going to be getting more into the work that you do and how you've been supporting the careers community for many, many years. Now, for those of you that are watching live, but also if you're watching this on playback, as we know many of you do, please do join in the conversation through the chat, through the chat box, or leave us a message whenever you watch the show. Now, we're going to be celebrating a couple of new members, and we've got lots of new members that have joined the CDI community this month, as well as we're going to be recognizing somebody who's done some outstanding work in our field. So coming up in the next 5 minutes, you're going to be learning which members are getting celebrated this week. It's getting, as well as the latest CDI news, as well as we're going to end, as always, with the latest news stories impacting our sector, including the latest developments. So this week's shout out, Well, firstly, actually, I want to start off with celebrating and give a big warm welcome to the newest members of our CDI community. It's always awesome to see our community grow. Now, there's a huge list, and I'm not going to do service by just kind of rattling through the names. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be posting it in the feed right now. So please do check yourselves out. Is your name in there? Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's great to have you in there. And this week's Feel Good story is one that comes from Jessica Cook, who's also AKA known as the Careers Lady. And the link that I'm going to be referring to, the post that was posted on LinkedIn, is going to be available in the resources document. So please do check it out. And she is one lady who loves the work that she does and went above and beyond to provide career support to the young people she works with. And it's absolutely phenomenal. She didn't allow the challenges and barriers get in her way. And it's amazing how we can use Google. So please do check out that feed and go and show your support if you are members of LinkedIn. Now, Dr. D, what's your feel-good story for the week?
Well, my feel-good story is I'm going to be a grandmother in October. And I suppose I've got a little bit of a funny story, which is I'm in a relationship with Michael Johnson, the Olympian, at the moment. And it's a love-hate relationship, because I've got a little app and I'm doing the couch to 5K. So Michael and I, every other day, depending on my mood, I either love him or I hate him because he pushes me all the time.
So we just need people like that in our lives, and I love that. There's many people that I have a relationship with as well, and I just want to kind of tune in and pick up on some of the comments. We've got our previous co-host Victoria saying welcome. Great work, Jess. We've got people watching from rainy Glasgow. Lovely to see you all and to be listening to Dr. D. Oh, thank you. I don't know who it is that's commenting about my hair, but yes, I recently did a bit of a hair transformation, so thank you for that. Welcome new members. And Chris has just launched all your names, so do check it out in the comments. Is your name in there? It should be. I particularly like the final new member's name because it ends in Brill, so check that out. And so, let's get into today's theme, Chris. What are we going to be talking about? What's the power topic for today, Chris?
Yes, thanks a bit. So, and shame on me for not noticing the haircut. So that is my observational powers have clearly a number of limits. So as members can probably see and viewers can see, as you see the banner scrolling along the bottom. Yeah, our topic today is I would say, one that's got the potential to be a bit divisive, but we're not a divisive show, and we're going to try and address that in a slightly different way. And it's all about politics, getting political, and the impact of politics on policy. CEIAG, something that our guest Deirdre has an awful lot of experience in, as she's mentioned already. So I suppose, Deirdre, to kind of kick things off, we've sort of referenced that maybe kind of politics can be a bit of a thorny topic for careers professionals sometimes, in terms of perhaps where our kind of influence sort of begins and ends. And so I suppose from your perspective, having kind of done quite a lot of work in the policy space, where do you sort of feel that careers professionals can get a little bit more involved in terms of kind of politics and policy, and what are some of the big areas, I guess, that really impact on the work we do?
Well, I think there's a few key points here. First of all, as careers practitioners, we don't come into the profession to be political or to be politicians. So first of all, we have to think about our training, and are we preparing advisors well enough to deal with something that doesn't always float our boats all of the time. We focus on the needs of the individual. We're very person-centered. That's what our training and our day-to-day work is, and rightly so. However, I think our work is greatly influenced by politics and by policy. So those two Ps are really important. So let's have a little think about some of the politics and policies that are contemporary at the minute. Lifelong learning strategies, inspection frameworks, benchmarks, payment by results, inputs, destinations, value for money assessments. So all of those are just sort of themes. And I think for us as a community of practice, we've got to think, what happens in these government policy circles? And it really differs depending on where you're working and who you're working with. And it depends on the ministers and their policy advisors, the extent to which they value, careers work. So we all know that on the 18th of December, sketched in my mind in 2013, Michael Gove, the then Secretary of State for Education, said we should do more to engage employers with schools and vice versa. What he said was, I emphatically do not believe that we need a cadre of careers advisors to operate in between the two. And this was evidence from the select committee. And this sort of path has followed in England, since then, really, around the employer engagement and schools needing to do more. And I think it's encouraging that we're seeing more recently personal guidance is now coming into the conversation again, linked to an evidence base. And I'd actually like to see more, of that. And then in stark contrast, ministers in Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland, where I've been working for quite some time, they view careers advisors as part of the solution, not part of the problem. So Brighter Futures in Wales, a 5 years vision where advisors are working, right through that sort of early primary, right through to the lifelong learning piece, similar with Scotland. So I think if you were to say to me, well, how are we going to influence then? Because we didn't come in to be political. And I always find myself as a practitioner first. There's a couple of little things I would say, do's and don't checklist, maybe. First of all, do be canny and astute. Always look to find a hook where you can showcase your work. Don't hide your light behind a bushel, because if you don't bring your work to the fore, then who else will do that for you? Don't forget about the evidence base. So when somebody says, well, the evidence base is weak for CEIAG, it absolutely is not weak. There's an international body of evidence that underpins our work on economic benefits, on the social and the cultural, benefits. So if you're new to the profession, seek out that evidence base, and there's lots of places that you can look for that. We can come and talk about that maybe later. Don't forget about the importance of emotion. People, the man and woman on the street, because guess what? That's how you become a politician. You have to listen to the man and woman on the street. So we need to, as practitioners, we need to get those real live case studies. And sometimes we're so busy doing the job that we forget to capture that. So it's a kind of note to self about build your case studies. I think the third thing I'd say is don't wait for government to come up with a solution. Because if you do, you will be waiting a long time and you will probably be very disappointed. And I can say that, having been chair of a National Careers Council where recommendations were made and they were ignored. So don't wait for government. Think about how the system that we know can work well based on our grassroots understanding. Think about how it can always be moved along and improved. So, be what I call a community activist. And you can be a little small, quiet community activist, or you can be a big, big voice community activist. But you've got to be a community activist, to get that movement. And do be provocative and stimulate ideas and thinking. So here's a wicked question for our listeners in England. What if people get tired of Gatsby benchmarks? What will happen then? What will be the big message to government and to policymakers about what comes next? So I think you need to be a bit more provocative, have more of a voice. Don't forget the importance of those manifestos. I'm a bit of a geek, so I do read these manifestos, and then I try to hold the person feet to the fire around this is what you said. So let's get a bit more there. And just don't assume those politicians know what you're doing, or the policymakers, because 9 times out of 10, you think they know what careers means, but actually for them often it doesn't.
And I think it's a really good point, Deirdre, around, well, lots of really good points there, but I think particularly around the activism side, where as we sort of said before, sometimes there's those blurred boundaries. People, hear activism, they think it's got to be party political, but of course we're not really talking about party political stuff here, but talking about the things that you're passionate about as a careers professional, and making sure that those kind of issues are raised, advocated on behalf of. So I think it's a really, really important point to share, and I guess linked a little bit, Sabir, with our kind of next discussion point we wanted to come on to as well.
It is. Thank you for that, Chris. And oh my God, Dr. D, loving those tips. And I love the way that every time I hear you, I feel I get empowered. I feel like you light a fire under me and I'm like, right, what am I going to do? Where do I need to go? And I love that. And I can see as well, because the chat box is blowing up. So I'm just going to come to some of the comments and then I'll jump to the question that we have for you, Dr. D. So, you mentioned, I love that question. You were being provocative. You were like, okay, what if we all get sick of Gatsby? Well, one of the Facebook users has commented that there's recently been some research into personal guidance, and it's an interesting read, and they've actually shared the link in the comment section. So for any of you that are watching live or after the recording, if you're in the Facebook group, and this is an advantage of why you want to be part of this community within the Facebook group. I know so many of you are now watching us on YouTube, and that's great, and we love you and we love having you there. But if you want to get, particularly because Dr. D is giving us a bonus today, and if you want access to that bonus, the only place you're going to find it is in the Facebook group. So if you're a member of the CDI community, then awesome, come and join us. And if you're not, why not? Look at the amazing value and look at all these amazing guests that we get to have, empower us, and provide us with great opportunities to learn and grow our practice. And then we've got another Facebook user here saying, totally agree with Deirdre. We're absolutely part of the solution, as indispensable as somebody's doctor. Love that. Love you for saying that. Then we have Sarah Clifford. Hi, everyone. I would love to hear. So there's another question here for you as well, Dr. D. Opinion on the panel concerning lifetime skills guarantee outlined in September 2020 by Boris Johnson. I looked at the transcripts where he outlined the free level 3 courses that will be on offer. And in this transcript, actually, the questions, the choice of doing a degree and suffering the associated debt. Do you think the government still underestimates the value of good career advice and the value of choice and signposting? So Dr. D, quick, 9 seconds. How would you answer that question?
Yes, they currently undervalue it, but it's our job to make them value it. So that's why we have to get together as a community and have a really strong voice, because lifetime skills guarantee will fail if they do not have careers intermediaries in the mix. So yeah, I think we've got to say what our position is on that and say it loud and clear and have a really good united voice.
Love that.
I think just to add,
to add
on
Chris.
to that, sorry to be, I think, because this is something we'll come on to in the news at the end, but I think this is where the connectivity between the different parts of the careers community is so important as well, because when we hear about the skills bill, I think there's a lot of focus, understandably, on further education, which has been certainly in England neglected for quite a long time. But I think what people often do then is sort of forget, well, actually, where does higher education come into this? Some of the problems we're seeing in higher education at the moment are going to have that knock-on impact further down in terms of CEIAG. So I think that, as Deirdre said, being connected as a community is so important, so that we know what's going on and how that could impact the other parts of it. So a little interruption there, apologies.
No, Chris, that was great, because I love that, because obviously you're working right now, you're in the thick of it. So it's really good that we've got this expertise here today with us all, and we're all bringing our different perspectives, as well as our viewers who are also sharing their expertise as well. And yeah, I keep coming in with your comments. I'm loving them. I promise you we'll get to as many as we can as well. Just to sort of kind of pick up on one of the feedback that we're getting here, we need to promote our professional membership to raise the voice 100%, and that's exactly what we are doing today. So Chris mentioned earlier that we had another question that led into some of the tips and hints that you've given to us, Dr. D, today. So earlier this year, we saw the Career Development Policy Group put on the Great Debate. Now, if you weren't able to catch this debate, where were you? Oh my God, it was just phenomenal. However, please know that in the resources document, the recording of the Great Debate will be made available. And this was hosted by Tristram Hooley, and it was a very public debate featuring a cross-party panel of political representatives focused around the English government's skills for jobs white paper. Now, Dr. D, do you think there is an appetite for more of this type of open discussion with politicians amongst our community, and how can we do more to engage constructively in policy influence? Dr. D.
Well, I love that emphasis on constructively. So the answer in short is yes, for sure. I think more open discussion with politicians can take place in a number of different ways. And I was thinking about this, and I thought I'll draw a little pie chart. And it came up with sort of 4 quadrants to illustrate how I think we can engage in policy influence. So here's the first little quadrant, which is engage with politicians and policymakers in what I call big challenge issues. So, for example, lifelong learning is a really big topic now. But what does lifelong learning actually mean? Is this maybe a move towards vouchers and we give more people vouchers for learning? Or is it cradle to grave, the sort of Swedish definition of lifelong learning? Or is it skills activism that we target certain groups? So I think we can engage in what I call those big challenge issues. Having a skilled workforce and motivated now in the future. Career exploration is a big issue, I think, and reimagining in a post-pandemic world, a digital society, leaving no one behind. I could go on, and at present there's lots of commissions out there. Some argue there's far too many new commissions popping up. But look, why not join in one of the commissions or one of the discussions along with the CDI and actually have your voice heard? So that's number one, that big issues. Number 2 is all about responsiveness. Now, I get busy, you get busy, and sometimes, politics really does take a bit of energy. But look, if we're not responsive, so for example, you talked about the lifetime skills guarantee, a lot of emphasis on level 3 in the courses, but be responsive to the consultation on level 2 provision. Because remember that before sort of the skills bill and all of that, there were major concerns that people were not able to progress onto the right courses and were becoming marginalized because there wasn't enough level 2 provision. So respond, to those consultation papers as an individual, but help the CDI, shape its responses as well. And your ideas of practice on the ground is really what will make it most interesting. Academic work is fabulous, but sometimes not everybody gets turned on by academic findings. It's what goes on in your local community. So be responsive where you can and keep going. I've already touched on provocative thinking. I really believe that we are at an important juncture now around the future of career support, particularly in England. And as I said, think about another wicked question. Where are the places and spaces locally that young people and adults can go to for career support? And I've published a paper on this for FETL, which we've got the link in the resources. But if a minister, if your local MP, if you or I cannot answer that question, the system is broken in some way. And we, as a profession, need to step in and help inform where we think the places and spaces, online and offline, should be. So, here's another wicked question. How can careers professionals and those who work in the employability sector, like the Public Employment Service, how might in the future they find closer ways of cooperation, communication, coordination, etc.? And then the fourth and final point is about inclusion. So when you think about this, where are the voices of the people that we serve? So it's fantastic that we as a profession say, these are the standards and these are the ethics and this is the level that you have to be a registered careers professional. But I'd like to see more about the voices of the people that we serve actually coming in and presenting these to help the policymakers and the politicians understand that actually it isn't all about us. It's about the people in the communities that we serve. So I think, don't wait for government to invite you. A funny story, I went to an agricultural show with my husband who was working there at the time, and there was a tent with an MP, And I was bored looking at the cows and the machinery and that. So I just went into the tent and I introduced myself. I told them all about, what was good in the system and what was bad in the system of career support. And I felt it was very cathartic by the end of it. I had a great day. So I'm just saying to you, seize every moment you can. If you can meet with your local MP, do, write, call, speak to their secretary. And even if you just give them a sense of your passion, because what brings about change and what brings about, in my experience of politics and policy, the personality of being able to convince someone, one, you're passionate, two, you're informed, and three, that you're not going to go away. You're going to keep going. So I think that's my little quadrant of, it's not really a pie chart as such, is it? It's 4 bits in a way. Yeah.
I love that, Dr. D, because what you've done is you've given us some practical tips, so because sometimes it can be sort of kind of very out there, very right, and you can't sort of quite grasp that. So I love the way that you've sort of broken it down with your 4 tips. And one of the themes that I'm hearing loud, through and through, is it's about us being inspirational and tapping into our own creativity and our own passion, and then starting small. It doesn't have to be this big thing, it can be this little thing. And talking of passion, I mean, this is the kind of passion that we've got right now, who are from our members who are watching us live. One member was just saying, I'm just popping into the chat as I'm about to deliver in a moment in school doing IAG, still trying to get the right top up with the CPD, catching us and hearing from what we have to say. But at the same time, as you talked about, that's the professional who's on the ground doing the work. Another member is saying we need to promote our professional membership to raise the voice. We also need to advocate. Another member is saying we need to also advocate for quality and time sufficiently for delivery beyond the tick box for schools. So again, if you're in that space, what can you do? What is, because we all have power, don't we? We all have influence, even if it is within our small community or a bigger community, and we can use that voice, we can use that power. One Facebook member was also saying, we all have to do a full horizon scan across the sector. Victoria is back on the chat again. She was saying how, this is the power. So Victoria was co-hosting obviously the previous show, and she happened to tell a HE colleague to come along. And as a result of that, the CDI, her colleague joined the CDI immediately. So well done you for making that happen. And that's about unity, isn't it? As collectively, when we come together, this is what we do together. So go on, Chris.
Absolutely. No, and I think just to kind of add on to that, what you've mentioned there, Deirdre, around those kind of multiple small acts. We've seen a couple of members in the group sort of talk about kind of pushing on those local government networks and links. Particularly as we're seeing, in theory, a commitment to levelling up in England, more devolution possibly. So I think that idea of what's going on locally being very different across the country, and how you can kind of work with those local networks to make those small changes. I think it's a really, really good point. And equally around, you mentioned about representation. That's going to link a little bit to what we're talking about when we move on to our next kind of topic, which we'll come to at the end of the episode. But bearing in mind, we're quite short on time. We've got a couple of minutes left before we move on to news. So you've already mentioned, Deirdre, there's a lot of stuff going, a lot of policy out there for kind of people to get their teeth stuck into. Post-16, Skills Bill is obviously a big one. We've also heard about things like the Universal Basic Income trial that's going to be coming in Wales, which again, lots and lots of sort of connections there to the sort of the curriculum for Wales and the careers programme that they've got across the Welsh regions. So I suppose just for any of our viewers who are watching, are there any kind of big sort of policy announcements, both kind of maybe in the UK and further afield, that people might want to keep an eye out for? Any kind of upcoming research that might be of interest from a policy point of view?
I think in terms of policy announcements, I'm too low down the pecking order to even begin to say what the policy announcements might be. But I can give you, I think, some themes that are emerging in the UK and in Europe and internationally as well. So we've only got a few minutes, so let me just give you just a couple of examples. One to watch out for, which I hope everyone has already read, is Investing in Career Guidance, which was a publication that came out last year from the ILO, UNESCO, CEDEFOP, and the OECD, where we're seeing at an international level these big organizations getting behind career guidance and helping to strengthen the voice and the evidence base. So just I hear on the ground that they're working on another version. So look out for that. That should come out later this year. The work that the OECD is doing, if you're a teacher in schools on career readiness, this is a great project led by Anthony Mann. Myself and David Blunstein are acting as advisors. And what we're trying to do is actually to come up with practical tools for schools around that ritual chestnut of how do you measure the outcomes of your work. So that's, I think, a couple of things to look out for. Another big, I think, strand that we're seeing, for example, across Europe, we are seeing more and more interest on the work of public employment services, particularly on career coaching and work coaching. So it's not something that we can ignore. What we need to just do is work out as a profession how we can complement and work with public employment services in that spirit of cooperation, communication and sharing. So Estonia is a really good example where they had a careers, really strong careers network, and it moved over into a public employment service context. But the careers work is still going strong there. Mm-hmm. Another quickie to look out for is in Canada, there's really interesting work around mental health and well-being and career guidance. So I'm working with colleagues in Canada, in Scotland and in Wales, where we're looking to see, could we produce an instrument where we could get enough scalable evidence to show that career guidance actually makes a difference. Now that's sort of work in progress. So just, you know, in your own area, it'd be great if you're doing anything on that topic to feed into the CDI, because all of it is part of building this evidence base. There's a new curriculum, 2022 in Wales. If you have any colleagues from Wales, love the idea that the new curriculum is all about skills. You know, this is a big rich chestnut going forward. Is our curriculum fit for purpose? Should we have more digital skills embedded in the curriculum? Or actually, do we need to reinvent the curriculum in the context of AI, machine learning? And so I think that's one to keep an eye on. Again, another thing maybe just to say, you know, in the US, we're seeing a lot around badging of courses, online badging. Chris, maybe in university, you see more of that around your books, massive open online courses, your vocational online courses, your little bite-sized certified badging of courses. I think we have to keep a real eye on that going forward, because we're already seeing more evidence on that. And then I suppose on that question of the universal basic income, Wales has stepped forward with a pilot. I think we should all watch that and see how that unfolds. But other countries like Finland, China, India, Brazil, etc., have already tried this out, and in some cases have continued to scale that up. So we, I think, as a community of practice and the CDI members, we've got a great opportunity. Think of all those hooks that I've mentioned just in this short space of time. We've got a great opportunity to say where careers fits into the narrative. And then my final little gem that someone told me, I can't take any credit for this. Someone said to me, there's 3 scenarios going on at the moment. So pre-COVID, in COVID, I see, and after COVID, AC. So AC cannot be PC, because any major technology disrupts companies, institutes, professions, communities. So my message is we've got to be very PC, and we've got to really now say to our politicians and think about our policies that we're PC, we're not, I'm getting it mixed up, we're AC, you have to practice it a few times, AC, not PC. Because I remember once speaking at an event, and I was talking about the importance of quality assurance in the profession. And someone said to me, oh, it all sounds very much like the black and white TV. That was then, and you need to move up to colour TV now and make it much more. So I think I'd like to say, let's seize this moment now around in the aftermath of COVID. We have hooks, we have evidence, and most importantly, we have passion.
Well, absolutely, Deirdre. And I think, particularly around the connectivity that you've been talking about there, just shows the extreme importance of having that, to know that all these things are going on and how they perhaps link in with, the work that we're doing. So fantastic insights there. Seen a huge amount of kind of member input. We can't come to all those comments now because we'll run over time, but I think just on behalf of Sabir and I and all of the viewers, it's been fantastic having you on. Hopefully you might stay on for the next 5 minutes just for the news, because I know that we've got a small bonus concerning yourself as well. So without further ado, we're going to pass straight over to Sabir for the CDI news and the small bonus that I've just mentioned.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that. Again, oh my God, so powerful, so powerful. So much love for you, Dr. D, in the chat box. We've had comments such as epic role model. I'm glad to have your status, somebody like with your status on our side. So a lot of love for you from the members and the viewers today. Now, as Chris mentioned, we've got two we've got the bonus from Dr. D, which I'm so grateful for. And by the way, okay, if you're wondering, if you're watching this and you're thinking, how can I get in touch with Dr. D? Her contact details, her social hashtags have all been included in the resources document, as well as the bonus document that Dr. D has given us today. And if you're wondering and you're watching on YouTube and you're thinking, hey, how do I get access to the resources document and the bonus that Dr. D has given us today? You've got to come into and join and become a member of the Facebook community in order for you to get access to this. If there's a reason why you should become a member, I think that's a pretty good one. Wouldn't you agree? And so my three top CDI stories for this week are as follows. The CDI have just announced that the 2021 National Careers Leaders Conference is now open. So you can head on over to the CDI website to get more details about that. And if you're wondering when that is, that's going to be on the 8th and 9th of July 2021. Also as well, the CDI is developing a program for supervision. I know so many of you have hit me up with this question around supervision, and now more than ever. Well, guess what? The CDI responded, they listened, and they have been putting on webinars, and there's another one coming up this week as well. So if you missed the first one, please do check it out. Head on over to the website, full details about where you can access that information. And there's a bit more details about how the supervision is going to work and what that's going to look like. We'll include it in the resources document. And then you've heard us talk about it, you're going to hear us talk about us even more over the coming months, the new career development framework. Now, all the materials supporting the new career development framework and the supporting case studies is all available if you head on over to the CDI website. And there is also on Monday, the 28th of June from 9:30 to 11:30, making the transition, the new framework for careers leaders, SLTs and careers advisors is taking place. So if you haven't already booked yourself on, please make sure you do. Now the bonus. So you've heard Dr. D talk about various different aspects of how we can get political and the impact of politics. So if you are that passionate practitioner who's out there doing your thing, excelling, and you want to now take it the next step, this bonus is for you. And we will be releasing it straight after by our fabulous Liz, who supports the show. We'll be releasing it in the chat group, so come and check this out. So that's me wrapping up for today's show. Chris, over to you. What are your top 3 highlights for general CDI, non-CDI news, should I say?
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Sabir. So, as Sabir's mentioned, that show resources document, you'll be able to find it in the file section on the Facebook Community of Practice. So big thanks to Liz Rees for putting that on for us after the show. And again, Deirdre's very kindly put together, it's quite an extensive sort of 2-page kind of PDF with lots of practical tips for influencing politics and policy making. So Deirdre, thank you again for that. Very kind of you to put it together for us. In terms of the main news, 3 kind of key stories. There's quite a bit in the news that I put in there for the show resources document, but 3 big ones I think to keep an eye out for. One is a story from The Guardian about sort of employer sentiment in terms of return to work, and the interesting announcement, interesting maybe the wrong word, announcement from Google about the expectations of their staff returning to work from the autumn, which I think is a bit of a U-turn. People maybe weren't expecting from a big tech company, but a real focus on in-person culture. Now, people have very many different views on this, which we don't have time to cover today, but let's just say some interesting themes and perhaps trends to look ahead for. The death of the office may have been overstated in some sectors, certainly, so well worth having a look at. We've also got a really, really great 14 to 19 careers guide linked to the DOTS model that's been put together by Complete Careers. And I'll just double check the school. I want to get it right. I think Greenwood Academies Trust. So Complete Careers and Greenwood Academies Trust put together a Fulfilling Futures Connecting the Dots kind of careers guide for 14 to 19-year-olds. Really worth having a look at. Lots of contributors in there, lots of really useful information. So we've included that in the resources doc as well. And then finally, I sort of mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I've included the link to the Wonky podcast where they're talking all about the skills bill and particularly around the links to higher education. And like I say, if you're from more a secondary school or from further education background or adult guidance, and sometimes higher education seems to keep itself slightly more separately, I think this does a really good job of showing how it all connects, particularly around some of the stuff that's happening around the rhetoric of dead-end courses and what funding might be allocated for particular subject areas. That is almost certain to have a knock-on impact further down the line in other forms of education. So some really, really important stuff to look out for there. So that pretty much rounds up the news for this week and rounds up sort of what we've kind of been talking about. And before we say our goodbyes, just a reminder that we'll be back in 2 weeks' time. So we'll be back on the 9th of June, he said, expectingly, checking his calendar. And we're going to be joined by the fantastic Emma Bolger and Ugana Ramsey. And we're going to be talking about unconscious bias in careers work. So really, really interesting episode ahead. Look forward to hopefully seeing you all there. But all that remains to be said is thank you very much for Deirdre for joining us today.
Thank you very much. It's been a delight.
Thank you, Dr. D, for having us. And people in the comments are now mentioning, oh, we like the new name, Dr. D, and they're like saying, yep, you might now. So I've started a new trend, I think.
You have started a new trend. My daughter-in-law calls me Dr. D. So I'll take that. I'll take that.
Take that. It's given with great love and affection, Dr. D. It comes with great love and affection.
Oh, brilliant. Well, thanks to everyone for their input today. Thanks to all the viewers who've been watching and commenting. And we'll see you all in 2 weeks' time. Have a great week.
Bye.